Hi there. Welcome to another edition of TokStocks. I'm your host, Keir Reynolds, and today we're lucky enough to have Jim McDonald, President and CEO of Kootenay Silver, trades on the TSX Venture Exchange under the ticker KTN. Hey Jim, how you doing today?
Great, great. How are you, Keir?
I'm wonderful. I've been meaning to have you on. Your company's mentioned all the time as a top sort of silver stock, something that we should be chatting with. So really appreciate the opportunity to get connected and get you on to the program. Before we kind of get into the full sort of meat and potatoes and what you got going on, let's get our 60-second pitch out of the way.
All right.
First question. Easy one. What is the name and stock ticker of your company?
Well, we just heard it. Kootenay Silver, KTN on the Toronto Venture Exchange.
And what is Kootenay Silver's mission and vision? What do you want to do when you grow up?
Well, Kootenay Silver is a discoverer of silver deposits. So our objective is to discover silver deposits focused in Mexico. And the objective is to find economic deposits that we can sell to silver miners.
And how many shares are outstanding?
We've got 61 million shares outstanding at the moment.
And approximately what is your market cap today?
It is approximately 70 million Canadian.
And what do you know the approximate insider ownership?
Yeah, so I'm a founder of the company. We've been running the company for 15 years. I've personally, with my wife, we have over 500,000 shares now. We consolidated last year, 10 for 1, a rollback. We've got notables like Condire out of Dallas, Texas, Eric Sprott, and a lot of institutional holders, especially in Switzerland, account for around 30% And then we've got a lot of retail investors as well, a real big retail following as well.
So you'd sort of say around 30% would be sort of like insiders and institutions?
Yeah, more than that. It'd be, over 30%, certainly.
Great. And are you fully funded for the next 12 months?
Well, yes, we are, and that depends how much we accelerate the drilling, of course. But we're in the middle of a 20,000 meter drill program, literally like in the middle of it. And at the end of that, we expect to be exiting with about $3.5 million in the treasury.
And any short-term catalysts that investors should be on the lookout for?
Yeah, drill results. Drill results. Lots of them.
Hey, excellent. Well, hey, Jim, thanks very much for going through that. Now we can get on to our regularly scheduled programming. First question, for those of my audience and even myself that aren't really familiar with you, I've seen your name a few times, but maybe you could just give us a brief introduction, who you are, what's your background?
All right. So, geologist by degree, and I spent the first few years of my career with a big mining company, and then very quickly got into the junior resource space. This is way back in 1988 now, and have been involved in starting up junior resource companies, developing assets for them, making discoveries. The most notable company that I helped put together as a founder was National Gold. We bought a gold deposit from a big Canadian mining company at the bottom of the gold market. And the long and short of that is that we brought in another junior to help us finance it, and that turned into Alamos Gold, which is a big mid-sized producer that's the way to being a senior producer today. I stepped off that board some time ago now in 2012, and that was my introduction to Mexico. And then we started up Kootenay Silver as an exploration prospecting company, and shifted our focus to Mexico, and we've made 3 discoveries with resources on them, and now we're on our 4th.
Oh, that's quite the track record. You got some good company there with Alamos. Been a tremendous company. So, and then obviously 3 on your 4th discovery, building it up. That's pretty phenomenal. So you kind of touched on it, but maybe you could expand a little bit, talk a bit about Kootenay Silver, in terms of just the general positioning of it for investors so they can understand?
So Kootenay Silver started out as a prospecting venture where we were focused actually initially on gold deposits. Uh, because of my introduction into Mexico with the Alamos Mulatto story, we started to look in Mexico. And because of the mineral wealth there, it was just absolutely incredible place to be working. Our new Columba discovery, which is a brand new discovery, is an example. Here's a project that had two periods of mining historically in the past, but had never been drilled. And it was sitting there begging drilling. There'd been no work done in 40 years. So opportunities like that, they just don't seem to exist anywhere else. And so Kootenay Silver is really focused on silver discovery in Mexico, and Mexico is the biggest silver producing region in the world.
So right now, there's many sort of mining juniors. Depending on who you are, it's actually been a pretty good sort of mining market or mining exploration market. Probably the best that we've had in quite some time in the last couple of years. With the rise in metal prices and corporate investors now starting to loosen up the strings on their checkbook and start to invest in some of these juniors. We're seeing a little bit more sort of upside. What differentiates you guys? How do you sort of get your elbows out and make sure you get your fair share of investor interest?
Well, a big thing that differentiates us is our track record. Number one, we've made numerous discoveries. We're probably in our best discovery to date. When you look at our board and management, we've got experience right from the grassroots stage to building mines. We've built mines, we've operated mines, and we financed every step along the way. And so that's quite a deep bench, to use a sports metaphor, for a junior company. And that makes us stand out.
Uh, how many sort of silver equivalent ounces now, if you were are on your balance sheet? You mentioned you've got, I think, 2 or 3 projects with 43-101 resources. Approximately how many ounces silver equivalent would you have now on the balance sheet?
Yeah, we have 3 deposits with 43-101 resource statements on them, and they total 214 million ounces of measured and indicated silver equivalent ounces. And then there's another 54.9 in the inferred. And our new discovery, Columba, does not yet have a resource on it. And the objective of this year's program, at the end of 20,000 meters of drilling, we believe it will be enough drilling for a maiden resource early in the new year.
Hey, excellent. Well, I think that's a great segue. Maybe you could give us a quick overview on what those deposits and projects are for the company. What's your flagship? What's the strategy with them? But first, maybe you could give us a brief overview on your project portfolio.
Okay, so there's 3 resource projects. There's Promontorio, there's La Negra. Those 2 projects are on the same property. Promontorio was our original discovery, and it attracted an investment from Agnico Eagle. They're no longer shareholders, but that attracted their attention. Then we made a second discovery called La Negra. And by the way, Promontorio is a very large diatreme hosted silver, gold, lead, zinc. It's low grade. It needs high silver prices. La Negra, a very interesting project, didn't turn out to be nearly as large, but it sticks right out of the ground, forming a hill. It could lend itself to real low cost open pit. It's got great metallurgy, good grade for open pit, and we think it could be a real nice producer for a small company at some point. And then the La Higuera project sits that's the third deposit resource. It sits in the famous Parral district of Mexico, which is along that Sierra Madre trend where many of the big districts are. And we're just north of an on trend with an area that's produced 500 million ounces of silver, and today is mining at a 2,000 meter depth. And La Higuera sits at surface, so the potential for getting this thing a lot bigger. There's a lot of potential in that project. We did a new report, new study where we increased the grade of an open pit constrained resource from 85 grams to 102 grams a year ago. And at north of $30, the project starts to look really interesting. There's 51 million at M&I there, and another 11 million in inferred. Lots of room to grow, and we've just situated all those resource projects with fresh 43-101 reports to get ready to move them ahead in a strong silver market, which we're now just beginning to get into. In the meanwhile, we're really focused on drilling off that Columba discovery because it's a classic high-grade vein system. And if you have enough high-grade ounces, it doesn't matter what the silver price is, you can make money. So we're really focused on finding out what we got there exactly.
Yeah, excellent. It sounds like you got quite a lot of meat on the bone for your present market cap.
Yeah.
A lot of ounces on the balance sheet. And so when, Mexico is a big place, whereabouts are your projects kind of located? Are they all located in the same sort of area? Are they on some major mining trends? Maybe you could just explain a little bit about where you're sort of geographically located in Mexico.
So the Promontoria and La Negra deposits are in southern Sonora state. And then the La Siguera and Columba projects are in northern Mexico and Chihuahua, in the state of Chihuahua. And they are both on the Sierra Madre trend. The Columba discovery is in the northern extension of that trend, and La Siguera sits right in it.
Pretty prolific. There's a lot of mines that have sort of been developed on that major trend. So you're in the right area. Mexico's kind of been in the news a little bit. They just went through what the U.S. went through last night. They just went through their own sort of presidential election where they got a new sort of president. But there was a bit of mining became sort of I think open pit mining became sort of a bit of an issue, or there was some perception of potential political risk. What's it been like to sort of work in Mexico? And do you think with the recent election, it's sort of the political risk has subsided a bit? Could you comment on that at all?
Yeah, well, my expectation is it's going to be an improvement from the last administration, definitely in Mexico. Because the former president was very anti-mining, in fact, which is odd because Mexico is a big mining country, and a significant part of its GDP comes out of mining. It's got a long, long history, tremendous human resources there in terms of trained people in the industry, engineers, geologists, metallurgists, etc. So the expectation is that it's going to become more friendly. They have a government task force now studying the reform, and the chair of that task force is the governor out of Sonora state, which is a very pro-mining state. So it looks like we're optimistic on how it'll roll out now with regards to especially the proposed ban on open pit mining.
Right. And so any of your sort of like advanced deposits or projects, how many of those, would be, mined if they were ever going to be developed through an open pit method? All of them or one of them?
So in terms of the proposed ban, they, and all the language that's been written up on recommendations, etc., has been for any new concessions for open pit. So existing ones have not are being left alone as it currently stands and how we understand it today. So if that's the case, continues to be the case, depending on how the reform is rolled out in the end and laws are actually written, then none of the projects would be affected. If they were, it would be Promontoria, La Negra, and La Siguera, all open pit constrained resources. Columba is our new discovery that we're focused on here, is classic underground vein mining. It'd be
Right.
a classic underground situation, so unaffected with regards to that.
Excellent. So, if I'm not mistaken, you started drilling in Columba in 2019. You've done quite a bit of drilling there. Maybe you could explain a bit about how much sort of total drilling, and maybe you could explain a little bit to investors some of the drill intersections that you've reported. How wide, what's sort of typical with a high grade sort of vein system. Could you explain the project a little bit more and some of the exploration history?
Yeah, so it's a classic Mexican vein system. It's very similar to uh, new discoveries or relatively new discoveries, if you can call them that, in Mexico. The case of Panuca discoveries, now 300 million ounces. We got a similar kind of district emerging, perhaps. The Las Chispas discovery, which was made 8 years ago and is now in production, in fact, and was just bought out by Coeur Mining. And a similar footprint to that. So we're in a vein system. In other words, it's got the scope of size where you got potential for 100 million ounces or even multiples of 100 million ounces. The other thing is very interesting about this geologically. It's like a textbook example of a vein system because it's almost entirely preserved from erosion. So you can see the whole thing right from above where it begins, right into where at surface where it's exposed into the meaty part of the system where the grade begins. So it sits in a volcano, and in that volcanic cone at the bottom is where the veins are just barely exposed, as if you took an ice cream scoop out of it, and there's your veins in the bottom. There they are. When you go sideways and up the sides of that hill, those hills in the cone, your veins disappear, but they're still there underground, where the veins become well developed and have silver grade. If you're higher in elevation on that any direction, you lose your silver, but underneath the vein is still there preserved. So in other words, this thing has been barely eroded, and whatever was deposited here originally is still there.
And when you say district, what sort of strike length do you know what sort of strike length that we're sort of talking about?
Yeah, so we've now expanded it to about 4 kilometers in a northwest southeast direction and 3 kilometers in another direction.
And in terms of some of the, it's classic Mexican sort of high grade vein. What when you drill, are you getting like a couple meters of some fairly high grade? Would you explain what investors should sort of expect when these when you're in a pretty big drill program right now? We'll be reporting assay results. What does success look like? What typically are you looking for when you're reporting on assays? What would be good assays, and what have you already encountered?
Well, yeah, classic Mexican vein systems are often pretty narrow, and in the case of the Las Chispas, they're sort of meter and a half, but very high grade. Then you get other systems that will be wider and maybe a lower grade. So, as a rule of thumb, for underground mining in Mexico, you want 150 to 180 grams as your cutoff, okay? And sort of a 2 meter, 1.5 meter, 2 meter at that, or better, even though you can mine narrower with higher grade. And we're getting hits that are hits like 34 meters of 500 grams per ton, 17 meters
Wow.
at 650 grams per ton, 6 meters at 2,000 grams per ton.
Wow.
And a lot of hits that are in the order of 5 to 10 meters of 400 to 500 grams per ton. So we're seeing a lot of great, real fat intercepts. We got multiple different veins there that and the project was mined, as mentioned, twice in the past. The first time was in the early 1900s on what's called the F vein, and it turns out that's not even the best looking vein so far. But nonetheless, they were mining down to 200-meter depth. They had 6 tunnels put out when they were shut down by the Mexican Revolution. And that vein is typically kind of around 1.5 meters in thickness, but it's got a medium low grade stockwork around it that would pull above the cutoff in a lot of areas. And we've got that drilled off for 700 meters in length, 250 meters of depth, still open to depth, where we got holes that are sort of meter and a half, 2 meters up to 2,300 grams per ton, one of the deepest holes. And then we have another vein called the D vein, which we've tripled the strike length of this year. It's gone from 450 meters to over 1,200 with this drill program.
Oh.
And that's where some of our best holes are, like the 34 meters, a half kilo, which included almost a 10-meter intercept of 1,700 grams per ton. So really exciting. Those widths and grades could build ounces really fast, and a lot of targets not even yet drilled.
Excellent. So you've got about a 20,000 meter drill program. You're about halfway through. That's specifically for Columba. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Yep.
And so when should investors, how will you be kind of delivering the news? Will you wait for all the assays, or will you package them up and deliver them as they're received from the lab? What sort of, how many, how much news flow on drilling should we expect over what period of time?
Yeah, so we bundle up our releases in batches of several holes at a time. It gives it better context, more meaning when you do that. We've had several releases already on this year's program, very positive results, especially expanding the strike on that fabulous D vein. And we are just over halfway through the 20,000 meter drill program. We've got a lot of holes to report, and we'll be drilling right through to the end of the year. And so you can see drill results coming out November into December, and even into January as we get the last of the December drilling in.
Excellent. Thanks for covering that. Now, talking about your other projects, La Cigarra and Prometorio, those others that have resources. What's your sort of current plan? Are you looking to develop those? Are you looking for the price of silver to increase and maybe sell them? Are you looking for partners? What would be sort of like next steps? Are they providing kind of leverage right now based upon silver ounces? What's the strategy?
Yeah, they definitely provide leverage. So in the case of La Cigarra, which is 51.5 M&I and 11 in inferred, that project on paper looks really interesting, greater at a price greater than $30 silver. And then with the silver, the grade bump that we got, we put out a new 43-101 resource estimate on that project last year because we wanted to get it ready to move ahead when we get into a stronger silver market, which we're just emerging into now. So we want to start advancing that once the silver market gets going a little better, and we would consider a partner or sale of that project. Same with La Negra. It's very similar in that respect. So we've just positioned these things to move them ahead in some manner. When we're a little more mature into this silver market that we see we're coming into.
Excellent. Well, that's probably a pretty good segue. Why don't we talk some macro thoughts? So, what are your thoughts on silver? You're obviously directly eating, sleeping, living, breathing silver. What's your crystal ball look like?
Well, I think silver's got pretty big upside here in the next couple of years or more. We're just entering, we believe, a silver bull market, and that could last for a few years. Gold is hitting new highs these last few months in a pretty continuous manner. Silver hasn't come anywhere close to closing that gap, the famous ratio of gold to silver. Yeah. Historically, the mean is down around 60, 64, and the extremes are up to like over 120, more than that. And then on the other end, down to 14. So typically what will happen through a cycle is silver will start to catch up, and because there's so much industrial demand, and when you combine that with monetary demand, there exists an elasticity of supply created, which we've been seeing for a few years now in terms of just strict supply and demand. And then silver will really take off and outperform gold. at some point, and that ratio will come way down. The last time around, I believe it got under 40. And so just a few months ago, we were looking at silver that was down around $22. Now today it's about $32. It was recently well over 35. And so now it's broken that critical barrier 30, and it has not come anywhere near its old highs, which is over $50. And our belief is it's going to hit those highs and then go through it and establish new highs at some point. And that just from a historic market perspective, we expect that. Then combine the increased industrial demand we've seen for silver over the last number of years, especially in the solar sector, and combine it with that, and I think you've got a pretty explosive setup for upside on silver.
Excellent. So let's turn our attention to the financial health and cap structure of Kootenay Silver. So maybe you could just sort of go over, I know we already talked about it in our little 60-second pitch, but could you just talk structure again? How many shares are outstanding? Approximately how many warrants, options, things like that?
Yeah, so we've got 61 million shares outstanding. The 90-day average rate now is about 250,000 shares a day. You'll see in the last 3-4 weeks we've been between 250 and 500,000. When silver really gets a bid, you see that in our stock immediately. It's about 21.7 million warrants outstanding, going from around $1.20 up to $2.20, and expiring from spring of next year and then into 2026 in different prices and different expiry periods. And our treasury's quite good right now. We will exit this 20,000 meter program, have it all done and funded and done, and still have about 3.5 million in the treasury.
Excellent. And in terms of funding, talking about funding and any major shareholders, are you able to mention a couple of your sort of major shareholders, like institutions or strategics that you've got on board?
Yeah, so we've got big institutional, especially out of Switzerland, a lot of high net worth money, managed money there. Over 30% of our holding sits there. We've got notable investors like Eric Sprott, another big fund out of Texas called Condire, and then some pretty common resource funds, Sprott Asset Management, for example, Conway out of Switzerland, and institutions like that.
Excellent. And share dilution is always something that investors have to contend with. It works both when a company is not successful, that you face a dilution, but also when you have success and drilling success, and you're looking to advance projects, you constantly need to raise additional capital. How do you, in your seat running this company for a while, how do you sort of balance that need for financing with also trying to protect shareholder value? Any thoughts on that?
Well, it's pretty tricky, and we're in I would say, a pretty strong position now, very strong position at the moment, because we now own the Columba project 100%. The other projects we own 100%. So we're not under time pressure to be raising money at the wrong time. And we're going to exit this program with a decent sized treasury, so that relieves pressure, and which means that you can be more opportune on your financing windows. So you can be taking money at better prices and at times when you don't even need it. That's usually when the terms are best. So where you don't want to get into, the last 5-6 years has been really tough, and even beyond. But we had a bit of a lift there in 2016, 2017. But then since then, it's been a downhill slide, and it's very, very tough on all the junior companies. So we keep an eye on two things, and that the general market. Now, if we're right and we're entering into a prolonged bull market here with silver, we're also in a much better position with regard to that. And when we bought the Columba, when we entered the option on the Columba project, we took a chance that it was going to be a winner. It looks like it is going to be a winner, but then we had to pay for it in a never down market, even though we were producing incredible drill results. And so we got caught short having to finance when normally we wouldn't have, just because of price. But we knew we were onto something really unique and special. We needed to finance it, and we did. So we cleaned up our capital structure a year ago, and so now what we'll do is we're in a strong position not to be forced to finance when you don't want to or when the market's unfavorable, and now we can be a little more select on that, if you will. But it's always important also to maintain a strong treasury. So it becomes tricky when you're making those decisions because I had a CEO of Alamos Gold told me once that the ultimate dilution is going broke. So you don't want to do that.
There you go. Very well said. Yeah, very well said. So something that you've done in terms of maybe being non-dilutive is, correct me if I'm wrong, but you had a spin out and you've got another Kootenay. You've got Kootenay Resources, KTRI, on the venture, if I'm not mistaken. Could you walk us through a little bit about the reasoning behind that, what you spun out, how many shares existing Kootenay Silver shareholders got at the time, and now what it's like having two Kootenays?
Yeah, so that was to spin out all the very grassroots things, focus on Canada, because Kootenay Silver is really focused on Mexico, on resource projects and resource discovery. But we had a number of really interesting grassroots things in British Columbia, in districts with potential for tier one discoveries. So those sort of top the cream of the big, real big deposits. So we're in some districts that have produced some enormous mines. One being the Sullivan mine, which was the foundation of Cominco, which became Teck Cominco and now Teck. And these are the kind of deposits that will operate for 100 years or so. But it's very early stage, quite high risk, and all the money we were raising was for Mexico. And so these were all sitting there orphaned. So we spun them out. On the spin out, Kootenay Silver maintained just over 15%. And so now, with better markets coming, we'll start to finance and advance those projects and get them to drill stage. And the objective there is to make a tier one discovery. So we're focused only on those geologics areas where you have a chance of discovering one of those truly big deposits that result in billion-dollar buyouts of junior companies if they're lucky enough to get one.
Excellent. And was there like a plan of arrangement to distribute those shares, or Kootenay Silver retains the shares?
Yeah, that's right. No, it was a plan of arrangement. They're all distributed out except for, I can't remember the exact number, but it was around between 15 and 20% Kootenay Silver kept of the company. And then the rest was distributed to existing shareholders.
Excellent. So kind of like, so that helps deal with sort of dilution when you're getting a share in a new co. So excellent, good stuff there. Why don't we sort of wrap up here? You've covered some good ground, given us a good initial sort of first look. Maybe just to reiterate one more time exactly why investors should consider Kootenay Silver today.
Well, if we're right in entering into a silver bull market, anybody who believes in the precious metal price remaining strong, and especially silver, we have a tremendous amount of leverage on the silver price because of our large resource base. We got one of the biggest junior-owned silver resource bases that there are, not just in Mexico. The other thing is the brand new discovery is going to drive a lot of value. We're adding silver with the drilling now. I mean, almost every hole this program has hit pretty significant silver results, and we're on our way to producing a maiden resource there. And classic high grade, and the grade, that kind of grade works at any sort of price. So we're establishing the size of that project here. So two things: backed by silver, and also the upside of a new discovery. So you've got that drilled discovery oomph, plus you've got the foundation of the silver already in the ground.
Excellent. And then just to reiterate, what are a couple of short-term catalysts over the next 6 to 12 months that investors should be on the watch out for?
So the catalysts really to pay attention to are drill results. More and more drilling, look for those results. And at the end of this 20,000 meter program, we believe that's enough for a maiden resource, and then look for that would be in the new year.
And approximately how many meters of drilling? You don't have to be accurate, and we won't hold you accountable on it, but do you know approximately how much drilling you've done on Columba? Once you finish this 20,000, how much in total sort of been drilled there that you'd look to use to base that resource calculation off of?
Yeah, so it'll be 50,000 meters at that point.
Wow, there we go.
Yeah,
That's
it'll
pretty.
be somewhere north of 200 holes across various veins, mostly on the F vein and the D vein.
And how many veins are there? Two main ones?
There's over a dozen easily, and
Oh.
we keep finding more as we drill because it's not well exposed at surface. Remember, the erosion load just barely exposes those veins, so there's a lot that doesn't meet the eye, which is another really exciting thing about the project. We keep getting a lot of pleasant surprises in it.
How often does somebody like yourself get down onto site?
I was just down there last week, in fact. So depending with the drilling going down there, typically I'll be down there probably every 2.5 months because there's
I guess you've supervised and helped plan and design just I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of meters of drilling over the years. Anything? Are you doing RC or core?
Yeah, it's all core drilling, and we're just starting to embark on some directional drilling, which helps you actually aim the holes, and so we can get nice and specific targeting. It also saves some money because you can get multiple holes off of one initial collar, and it also gives you a better angle that you're cutting the veins at. So a lot of benefits there, and we have a really strong team of guys. Our geologists have been working for us. We generally between 8 to up to 15 years, and real great staff down there. So very capable. They're spotting the holes. We go over them together. We make our minds up about what the priorities are, and then start to execute.
Well, hey, that's excellent. Any final thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
Have a look at Kootenay Silver. I mean, very seriously, if you're interested at all in silver, you should have a look at this company.
Hey, excellent. Well, I really appreciate you for your time, Jim. It was nice to sort of kind of meet you for the first time on this. It's definitely a story we'd like to stay up on. So we'll be scheduling another sort of update in a couple of months here, maybe shortly after Christmas before you get into PDAC. And sort of go from there. But anyways, really appreciate you for your time, and thanks for walking us through for a first look.
Yeah, thanks, Kier. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.